Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, August the 31st. We are starting one more live stream, and now it's 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time. I hope we're gonna meet some of our usual friends here at the channel, and let's get started with news. Let's take a look at what's going on in Brazil this week. And the main headline is about the trial that former President Bolsonaro is going to face. It's expected to last about 10 days, and it's scheduled to start on September the 2nd. And here you can see the headline, get to know the room where Bolsonaro is going to be judged, and see where Moraes and other ministers are going to sit. Moraes is like, the superstar justice of the Brazilian Supreme Court, very controversial person, to say the least. But this is the main headline. And here, just so they don't forget about the United States, here the news is about, President Trump. And here says war against the Federal Reserve. That's how they are framing the dispute between President Trump and the Federal Reserve Administration. All right, for those of you who don't know, former President Bolsonaro is facing up to 40 years in jail for a attempted coup against particularly the former election that he lost. And there are, of course, two different sides about those facts that are going to be discussed or revealed in the judgment. And President Trump is particularly invested in trying to shield President Bolsonaro from the judgment, and President Trump says it's a witch hunt, right? There are naturally, right? There are two different sides of the story. Difficult to say that one side is right and the other one is wrong. There is probably excess from both sides, and that's what we have as main headlines today. I'm also going to run an ad about an ad from Remax Nomad States. And I told you before, I'm not sure if you guys were here when I shared, we have a partnership with a local Remax agency in Rio de Janeiro. We are actually doing even a co-sharing of a space in Leblon. And the idea here is that I'm going to play the ad. Hopefully this time, the volume is not going to be too much. Let me see if the volume sounds okay. Let me know if the volume is adequate or not. But the idea here is that we're partnering up with a real estate agency that could potentially assist people who are unable to hire our services for one reason or the other. Right, we are kind of educating the realtors of Remax Nomad States to understand which properties would qualify for the Brazil real estate investor visa, and also agree on a minimum standard on the properties being sold. Unfortunately, in Brazil, it's very common for people, particularly foreign citizens, to be offered properties that, in our opinion, they should not be even in the market, but they are still, being offered such properties. Just one example, right? Like in Florianopolis, this gentleman, he bought, of course, without our help, he came to us after the fact, but he bought a property for about 4 million reais. And unfortunately, the property didn't have a deed and was facing even issues caused by the location. The property was in an amazing location in Florianopolis, but it was built on federal land, and not only on federal land, but in a location that would cause harm to the environment, and therefore there was actually even like a lawsuit from the government for this property to be demolished, right? Like now, this gentleman, he paid 4 million reais for a property that, if he tries to sell, let's not even think about, if he bought something that was legal or not, but like if he tries to sell, he probably wouldn't recover even half the amount that he paid, right? Like, so clearly he was taking advantage by the locals, right? And unfortunately, again, this is not like a single event. We do see these things, happen every now and then. So therefore, the idea for us to partnering up with a real estate agency is like for those of you who just want to buy property, maybe you don't need like the real estate investor visa, but then you have like a source of listings or a real estate agent who's going to offer, like things that are going to be reasonably solid from a legal perspective, right? Like another plus, Remax, as many of you probably know, it's a U.S. based real estate kind of network, and now they are present in Brazil. This particular unit is based in Rio de Janeiro, but they do work throughout Brazil. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. Let's take a look and see if we have any participations already. All right, let's go back to the main feed. Aaron, good to see you, Aaron. Speaking of news, where would property seized from Ribeirão Preto go on auction, and could that offer a good investment opportunity, or do auctions generally come near market prices? Aaron, there are two sides to auctions, right? Now, it depends on who's auctioning the property. Sometimes it's going to be like at the city level. Sometimes it's going to be on the state level, right? So you don't know like who's the government entity seizing the property. But typically this is done at the city level. They have specific dates in which you can go and participate in the auction. Now, auction, generally you're going to have a discount. It could be like 20%, it could be 30% off price. Typically, they are going to sell if there is a tenant, right? Like, or if there is a holdover, former owner, you're going to need to kick this person out. And you may need to hire an attorney. You may need, to wait for a year, a couple of years. You may need to offer money for this person to go live elsewhere, right? And so there are naturally, just like in the United States, right? Like just like anywhere else, there are downsides. But typically, if you're just asking about, the pricing, typically what I see is like prices around 20 to 30% lower than the market average, right? And again, typically you're going to get this property, and the auctioneer, they're not going to make any representations in terms of how this property is inside. And for most properties, you cannot see how the property looks inside. And the auctioneer is also not going to make any representation in terms of whether there is someone living in the properties or not. Naturally, in Brazil, right, for whoever is operating in this segment, they are going to drop by. Sometimes they are going to, bribe the doorman and try to get information. Sometimes, the doorman is going to tell you, how the property is inside. Maybe the doorman has been in the property. They're going to say, well, the property is, I don't know, like in average condition, or the property is in a total disrepair, or the property is in good shape. They can also give you tips on whoever it's living in the property, right? All right, it's a single guy, or it's a family of 7 living in the property, and they are pretty, I don't know, pretty settled on staying in the property for a long time, or maybe they are already planning to move out. So this type of information could naturally impact on how desirable this property is going to be, because if you're getting this property at a 20 to 30% off price, and then you're not going to have a huge headache to get possession, to eventually renovate the property and either rent out, or maybe just to resell with a margin, right? So if you have like strategic information, that could reduce the downsides dramatically. Marisa Navas, boa tarde, Dr. Luciano. Amamos suas lives. Thank you so much, Marisa and Ricardo. Good to see you both. Thank you for the support. Brazil Vibes. Hello, Brazil Vibes. Good to see you again. Hi, Mr. Oliveira. For those who are considering the retirement visa, after 1 year, how much is the renewal? Thank you for your service. Brazil Vibes, I don't know the prices. Like we typically have a person here at the firm who's going to provide the pricing, but I think it's something very reasonable, right? I don't know if it is like 300 or 375 for the renewal, okay? A very good thing about the retirement track is that after a couple of years, you can actually apply for the permanent residency, right? So even if there is a price tag, for you to get to that point, after you arrive at that point, you're gonna have like permanent residency, and you could, in theory, after 4 years of permanent residency, Brazil Vibes, you can even apply for the naturalization, for the Brazilian citizenship, all right? So nowadays, very interesting, many people, they come to us, they say, well, I don't know if I'm going to apply for the Brazil retirement, or if I'm going to apply for the Brazil investor visa. And we typically say, listen, if you do qualify squarely, right? Like there are many, long shots, but if you do meet the requirements for the Brazil retirement visa, typically it's going to be a superior route, right? It's going to be better than the Brazil investment route because of the timeline. All right, Serge Demo. I'm having issues with the Brazil visa site. We have U.S. Passports going November 25. We paid airlines, cruise from Europe, Airbnb. Nervous. Could your firm help if we have problems? How to connect? Listen, Serge, like we don't assist at the last minute, right? Like if you are in a pickle, that's not the type of situation we like to handle, just because sometimes there is not much we can do at the last minute. You're going to face issues with, potentially losing money that you paid for airfare, hotels. And the best thing is to always act ahead of time to mitigate those issues, right? Now, if you're talking about November 25, that's a long time down the line. So maybe, no need for you to be that concerned, Serge. We do offer a service to assist with the Brazil e-visa. Typically, this is a service in which we don't make any money. We basically provided the service, just to bring people as a client, and in the future we would hope, they would use a more meaningful service. But yes, Serge, like if you need help, applying for the e-visa, instead of, just wasting time on their website, maybe you can just hire our service. I think it's very reasonable. I don't know if we charge something like $125 or $150 to apply for the e-visa. But yes, that's something we can help, as long as you're handling this ahead of time and not waiting, for the last minute. All right, Serge? All right, Brazil Vibes, do we have to hire your service and pay the same fees? All right, do we have to hire a service and pay the same fees? So, those amounts I told you, Brazil Vibes, they are for actually our renewal service, right? And for the renewal, if you have the visa already from the, let's say, if you go through the consulate route, right, and then you need if you needed to renew the service, it could be a different amount, right? Like, I mean, it depends on how much information we have, how many of your documents we have already. So when you start with us, let's say if you file the first application with us, typically for the renewal, we pretty much have most of the documents in our files, right? So if we need to start from scratch, then naturally, right, like $300 is not a meaningful amount for a law firm to apply for a renewal. Okay, so yes, this amount is typically for clients who have used our service for the first application. And if you're not our client, I think we charge a little bit more. I don't know if it is something like $600, but this is also not like a crazily expensive amount. All right, Brazil Vibes. Like, if you would, I'm gonna write here the email. The email address info@oliveiralawyers.com. If you just send the Brazil Vibes like a request, then we send you like in writing exactly how much the services cost, and then you can plan accordingly. Thank you for asking, Brazil Vibes. Aaron, wow, sounds like it's much more profitable to focus on pre-construction. Yes, Aaron, different people, they have different strategies. Pre-construction is also an interesting market. And Aaron, my problem with pre-construction, right, is kind of similar to the same problem I have with, whoever tries to send money to Brazil because of the high interest rates, right? So in my understanding, I like to think that there is no free lunch, right? So if you're getting a discount, is because you are paying for the same amount of discount you're getting elsewhere, right? So in terms of pre-construction, you're getting potentially a 20 to 30% price break because you're taking on substantial risk, right? And typically the reasoning I see from our clients is something like this. Well, I'm going to buy from this company. This company has been in the market for 20 or 30 years, and they have been delivering their projects on time, and I just trust them, right? And it sounds like a reasonable thought, but the problem is, what about all the global events we have nowadays? What about if for some reason we have a more kind of global war? Like, in my understanding, I think 2/3 at least of the Brazilian developers, they would go out of business, right? And if that happens, in the meantime, like if you prepaid, like that's another thing I see very often, going on with foreign citizens. They're gonna say, well, I'm gonna get a huge discount, like 35% or even 40% if I prepay this thing like in full, right? And then I say, listen, if you do that, it's your option. Yes, you're gonna secure a bigger discount, but the strategy that I do myself, it's actually the exact opposite. And again, I think it's more about investment styles. But my style is like, I want to get what I'm paying for, right? So whenever I'm buying pre-construction in Brazil, I do exactly the opposite. I say, listen, I don't mind getting just like a 20% price break on whatever this is going to be sold in the future. But I want to pay as little as possible up front. I want to pay as little as possible during the development. And I don't mind, paying a lot of money once I get the keys, right? Because then, if something happens, like a global war, if the developer goes under, maybe I'm going to miss, 20 to 25% of the selling price. Now, if you're prepaying this thing, you could potentially lose your shirt, right? So that's a different take. And that's what I see, the problem with pre-construction. That's the same thing with the interest rates, right? Like some people say, well, if I take my money to Brazil, I'm going to, get, 12% interest rates. And my take on it is like, the interest rates in Brazil, they are very high for a reason. There is a lot of, political risk. There are costs when you bring in money into Brazil. There are costs. Nowadays, it's just 3% whenever you want to take your money outside of Brazil, right? If you want to have a wire transfer done from Brazil to the U.S., there is a 3% tax just right there, the IOF. Typically used to be between 0.38% to 1.1%. Now the new federal government, the current federal government increased to 3%, right? Just to try to get more, revenues, and like very disappointing from foreign citizens' perspective, all right? But that's my take on it, and again, different people, they have a different investment styles. Paul Fonseca, good to see you again, Paul. Paul is asking, an American who has an American parent and a Brazilian parent, and the Brazilian parent is living in Brazil, what does the American child now as an adult need to bring the Brazilian parent here in to live? All right, Brazilian parent is living in Brazil. So, Paul, I assume you want to bring your parent to the U.S. Is that correct? Just let me know if that's the question so I can try to elaborate a little bit more. Simone, which bank is better to open CDE account, C6 or BTG Pactual? I need a bank account only to get the Pix option. Simone, so here at the firm we typically work with Banco Rendimento, right? But C6, BTG, so C6, BTG, and Banco Rendimento, these three banks, they all have the CDE account, okay? And I would say the best option is the one that's going to work for you. Typically, there is some level of red tape and bureaucracy in every single thing that you try to do in Brazil. So, many people, they come to us after they try to open the bank account and are unable to do so remotely, right? Like in theory, you don't need a legal service or a law firm to help you open a bank account. In theory, you just get in touch and you should work, but that's not what happens in reality, right? I remember like a couple of clients of ours for a probate in Brazil, like we worked on this probate, I think from 2022, if I'm not mistaken, to recently when we got the final, judge's order for the distribution of the funds. And then we were opening the bank account for them. So we were supporting the bank account opening process, and it took one of the siblings, it took a week. For the other one, it took a week and a half, right? And this one that took a week and a half, like he was even a very techy, savvy person. So just to share as an example that maybe, just that you are able to get an account open, that's good enough, Simone. But the one that we typically work with is going to be Banco Rendimento. It's just because we have a formal partnership with them. So when we are assisting our clients, we can, actually operate in their back office. Like we can, share documents on your behalf. We can, sometimes, nudge the back office to make this thing work. Okay, but these three banks, I would say, Simone, they are just fine. All right, like none of those banks, at least from what we know, would have any issues as of today. Sergi, thank you. Thank you, Sergi, for participating in our live stream. Brazil Vibes, thank you so much, Brazil Vibes. Brazil Vibes is buying me lunch. Is buying me lunch for tomorrow. Thank you so much, Brazil Vibes. I really appreciate it. and it's not because of the amount, it's because of the gesture and like to really try to do something nice for our channel. I appreciate so much, Brazil Vibes. Thank you very much. All right. Aaron, a 20% price break plus 15% in interest in a bank account is still a 35% discount, but with less risk. Great advice. Yes, Aaron. Yes. So, yes, I mean, there are different strategies, different appetites for risk. But I like real estate a lot, right? Like, I mean, just sharing my perspective, not trying to, tell you guys what to do. Like, I know you guys are, professionals. You also have a lot of experience. But myself, I've been through different occasions in Brazil in which, the Brazilian government would actually change the rules of the financials of the economy. There was even an instance in which the government basically froze everyone's accounts, and they would give you a cap of how much money you would be able to use from your own accounts, right? Like there was the so-called Plano Collor, right? I'm going to write over here, Plano Collor, historic event in which savings and accounts were frozen, and you could not take your money out, right? So that was a long time ago. But listen, this happened before, right? And, the current federal administration, it does not matter your political orientation. I would say it's not a great administration, right? Like they're very heavy on the, ideology. They're not really good managers. And I don't know, like if you keep money in the bank, if you keep, money in the financial markets, I don't know what could happen tomorrow, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if something crazy would happen. So in Brazil, I do invest heavily, but the only thing that I invest in is real estate, right? Because basically real estate, at least so far, throughout Brazil's history, nobody has ever reached or overreached in a sense of, basically stealing your properties, right? But in terms of financial investments or, savings or bank accounts, there were multiple instances in which there was an overreach by the federal government causing a lot of losses that no level of interest rate would make up for it, right? So that's my point. And that's why I really like real estate, because I think in addition, to appreciation, you can rent the property, if you need to sell, if you buy property in the right locations, it's somewhat liquid. It doesn't take long to sell, so you can, get money if needed. So I do like real estate, not so much investments in the financial markets in Brazil. All right, Ronnie Dio, bom dia, Ronnie, good to see you. Ronnie, can you discuss the digital nomad visa cost and what documents I might need before visiting if I'm going to hire you when I arrive? Ronnie, yes, we charge for the digital nomad. This one I know by heart is $975 to apply on your behalf. And I can tell you the most meaningful documents, right? Not all of them. And, if you're planning to do so, Ronnie, I think it's a good idea to schedule a consultation. Now we have a discounted consultation for the digital nomad. That's something new that we are doing, we are offering, just because if you're just interested in the digital nomad, we have now a junior attorney, and she's taking those consultations, and we're charging just $50, right? The typical consultation here at the firm is $125. the digital nomad only consultation is $50, and she can walk you through every single document that you're going to need. You can have your questions answered, right? And even those $50, they're going to be applied as a credit once if you hire our services, right? But let's go over real quick the main documents, right? The main document is going to be your apostilled birth certificate. I say the main one because that's the one that typically gives people, most of the legwork. We typically can advise on that, help you get a new version of your birth certificate so you can have it apostilled. We do review the document to make sure it is compliant before you come to Brazil with this document. So that's one of the main documents, right? The second one is going to be a letter of verification for the digital nomad type of work that you do. We do have a template that we've been developing over the course of hundreds of digital nomad visa applications that we typically share with our clients. That's the second most important document. The third one is going to be a set of bank statements. You need to provide the bank statements showing that you are being paid as a digital nomad. However, if you have like 18,000 US dollars sitting in a bank account, it gotta be either a checking or a savings bank account. They are not gonna do the cross-checking, right, between the company that's providing the letter of verification and your bank account, right? They're just gonna say, well, if you have 18,000 sitting in your bank account, we're not gonna go crazy about cross-checking, right? You will still need the letter of verification, okay, third document. And then the fourth one is going to be the background check, right? You also need to provide a background check. Aside those four documents, there are other documents, but these four are the main ones, okay? I hope that was helpful, Ronnie. All right. Simone, thank you. I will consider your option of rendimento. I may consult you to open my bank account to finally get my Pix, which is so useful. I already have my CPF as Swiss franc consulate. Exactly, Simone. So for those of you who don't know, like I think most of you do know, right? Like you are regulars here and we talk so much about the Pix. But nowadays, Pix is all the rage in Brazil, right? And I like to share that if you are in Rio de Janeiro, right? If you are in Copacabana, if you are in Ipanema, in Leblon, like you are at the beach, and someone offers you something, right? You say, I don't know, like ice cream, or corn, or like some type of finger food that you could eat, like at the beach, and you say, well, I don't have cash. I mean, immediately every single salesperson, they're going to say, well, you can pay me with Pix, right? Like you don't need to pay me with cash. So Pix, for those of you who are from the United States, is similar to Zelle, but like I used to say, I don't know, 1,000 times better than Zelle, right? Like Zelle is kind of is already pretty solid, right? Like there is nothing wrong with Zelle, but Pix is on another level, right? Just because pretty much anyone in Brazil is going to be using Pix, so everybody's going to accept Pix, everybody's going to be able to send a Pix. There is no cost. And that's one of the reasons right now making a connection to the ongoing disputes between the United States and Brazil. Pix is one of the concerns, is one of the reasons for the U.S. to be complaining against Brazil. They're saying it's unfair because Pix is actually supported by the government and not supported by the banks. And guess what? If someone is paying using a card, they are paying like, MasterCard or Visa or American Express, something between 2 to 3%, right? And who's paying the bill? Who's footing the bill? The consumer, right? But if you're using Pix, guess what? You're paying zero. There is no cost whatsoever. So you can pretty much enjoy your entire vacation in Brazil, paying everything, from hotel, like to ice cream at the beach and everything in between with Pix, with a 0% cost over the transaction. So it's a huge deal, right? And that's exactly the reason why Simone is asking, because Simone knows how important Pix is for your journey in Brazil. And yes, if you get Banco Rendimento, they do offer an option for you to use Pix. Even though this bank account is like the non-resident bank account. The non-resident bank account is not as well developed as the resident bank account, which is the typical one that we Brazilians use. But the non-resident bank account, as long as it has Pix, is going to give you a lot of flexibility when you are in Brazil. All right, Paul Fonseca, no, my friend is 21, and their dad lives in Brazil. My friend is 21, and their dad lives in Brazil. Right. So, Paul, let me see if I understand it. So, I understand that dad lives in Brazil, but your friend lives in the United States, right? So your friend is trying to bring the Brazilian parents to the United States, right? So that would be, if that's the case, that's a classic, a typical case of a green card by family ties. Good news is that typically, for parents is a kind of, higher level type of application. And then it's going to depend on the nationality, right? And if it is Brazilian, it could be something between 2 to 5 years, right? Like, I don't have here like the updated stats in front of me, but just by, the overall facts, I would say something between 2 to 5 years between starting this process and your friends, parents securing the visa. First, you get a visa on the passport. Once you enter the United States, then you get the green card, right? But there is a visa that's typically stamped on the passport. Very interesting to note, like there are a bunch of U.S. consulates in Brazil, but the only one who's handling, who's handling the green cards or the green card applications in Brazil is typically the U.S. Consulate in Rio de Janeiro. All right, I think it could be a good idea, Paul, for your friend to schedule a consultation, because then we can go over the specifics and give him more directions on how to accomplish what they are looking for. All right, Serge, thank you so much. It looks like I have a lunch for Monday and Tuesday already. Thank you so much, Serge. Serge is blessing us with a gift for $10 US. Thank you so much, Serge. Really appreciate it. All right. Ronnie Dio, sim, muito obrigado. Obrigado você, Ronnie. Thank you for participating and always sharing interesting perspectives on the Brazilian journey. Pedro, boa tarde. Good afternoon, Pedro. 15 people watching, 5 likes. Something is wrong with the viewers. Show appreciation for excellent information available nowhere else. Like, subscribe. Thanks so much, Pedro. Thank you very much. Yes, if you're enjoying the live, do me a favor. Go ahead and like the live, subscribe, and follow us for more content. I guess sometimes you're just too excited with the live stream. You basically forget about liking the live stream. Thank you for the heads up, Pedro. Thank you, all of you, for participating in the live stream. Now we have 17 people watching. That's so nice to see it. All right. So it's time now for us to share. Once again, we are doing twice in each live stream, so it doesn't get too much. We're going to just share the Remax ads. And like I told you, we have now a partnership with Remax Nomad States. It's a Remax real estate agency in Leblon, Rio de Janeiro. They actually work with every single Brazilian state, so not just Rio de Janeiro. You can reach out to Remax Nomad States, something we are doing, like we are doing a kind of, a co-sharing of space in Leblon. We do have our main office in downtown Rio de Janeiro, but just because so many of our clients, they are actually in Zona Sul, in the south side of Rio, we also do have a co-sharing now in Leblon. This co-sharing is with Remax, so Remax is / Oliveira Lawyers, and what we are doing, like we are training Remax, or kind of educating Remax realtors, so they understand two things, right? One thing is like which properties are going to qualify for the real estate investor visa, and the second one is what type of properties should be offered to foreign citizens, right? Like I said at the beginning of the live stream, unfortunately, many foreign citizens, like they don't know the culture, they don't know the language. Very often I hear that a lot. Well, I have many friends in Brazil, right? Unfortunately, sometimes they rely on the wrong friend and end up getting in a pickle, right? Like buying a property that's not worth what's being asked, or they getting some type of, deal with a property that doesn't have like a good title. There are all sorts of issues, right? Like in the Northeast, right? The Northeast is another thing that is hard to believe, right? Like there are some developers in the Northeast, right? Particular Ceará, targeting foreign citizens, and they have like a payment plan. They have beautiful presentations. They have a really nice, actually, they have a really nice showroom in Ceará, right? But we have notice of multiple buyers who are not getting the property at all, right? So by training, agents from Remax Nomad States, the idea here is that whatever they are offering you, these properties are gonna be meeting a certain standard, right? Like trying to avoid, basically bad deals that should not be offered to foreign citizens, if you will. All right. Okay, Paul Fonseca, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for participating. All right, we still have a few more minutes, so if you have any topics of interest, anything to be discussed live, now is the time to share. Let me know, and we will discuss live. All right, if there are no questions coming from our viewers, I'm going to address one question here from our backlog. All right, so what about, this is recurring, right? Like I feel like I am repeating the topics, and this one is about the so-called União Estável. Not sure if you heard about União Estável. Is like a type of civil union. And the question here is about the União Estável. If I have an ironclad prenuptial, will that preclude me from losing properties and assets that I have in the United States? All right, so real quick, just to explain about the União Estável. There are two versions of União Estável, or civil union, in Brazil. One version is going to be very similar to what you have in the United States as a civil union. You can basically go to a registry and say, well, we are living together. We don't want to go through marriage, but we are basically, buying or building stuff together, and we want this relationship to basically work just like a marriage, right? So this is going to be one of the versions in Brazil. That's the União Estável. That you go to the registry and you ask the registry to recognize the União Estável. Sometimes you need witnesses, but basically they are going to give you a deed of União Estável. There is a second one, which is typically the more concerning one when you are a foreign citizen, and it goes like this. Let's say if you have like a boyfriend or a girlfriend in Brazil, and you're going out with this person for a while, and you are presenting yourselves, meaning the couple, you're presenting to the society as a couple, even if you don't take like the steps to get a união estável, a formal união estável, after the relationship is over, one of the partners, one of the former partners, could go and file an action, file a lawsuit to confirm, to recognize that there was a união estável, right? So the second version is typically triggered after the relationship is over, right? So even though you never took, like an active step to establish a união estável, basically this other person is going to file and say, well, there was a união estável, right? Like we've been together for 2 years, we would go out and he or she would present me as, his or her partner, and therefore I wanna have those 2 years treated as união estável, right? And nowadays, to the surprise of many foreign citizens, a união estável in Brazil, from a legal perspective, is very similar to marriage, right? Like meaning that even if you never married to the Brazilian partner, even if you never got a união estável formally established, it means that you could be found in a união estável and therefore responsible for all of those things that come along with a marriage, including distribution of the assets acquired during the course of the relationship, right? And if that by itself wasn't concerned enough, nowadays there is no minimum, right? Like, I would say probably 5 or 7 or maybe 8 years ago, there was something informal that the judges would follow. Say, listen, if the relationship was not like of 2 years, we're not going to find a união estável there, right? Another requirement was, well, if they never live it together, there is no reason to be talking about união estável. Nowadays, there are no requirements, meaning that even if the partners are not living in the same place, even if the partners have been together for less than 2 years, believe it or not, a judge could still find you in a união estável, right? And finally, probably the last take on the união estável is that, and answering the question here, right? There is, unfortunately, prenuptial agreements in Brazil, they don't hold much water, meaning that, like in our legal tradition, judges, they have a lot of discretion. So particularly if they see, I don't want to, be, dealing with stereotypes, but let's say, there is a rich guy who comes from the West with a lot of money, and then he meets a poor young lady, and the guy is in his 50s or 60s, the lady is in her 20s, and she's poor. And then, the guy comes up with a prenuptial and basically, direct the young lady to sign the prenuptial agreement. When the judge sees that, I guarantee the judge is going to laugh at you. The judge is going to say, well, you think you were very smart to have the prenuptial done. Guess what? I'm just going to say this prenuptial, it's unfair, and I'm going to throw this thing away, right? So that's how the Brazilian legal system works. I particularly don't like the união estável. I think it doesn't make a lot of common sense because nowadays it's pretty similar to, in terms of effects, to a marriage, right? So why would you have a marriage and something else operating at the same level? It doesn't make sense. Like I do like the way that união estável used to work like 10 years ago, because then I think it was all about fairness, right? Like because someone would be living with someone else like for 10 years, right? Like, imagine a couple living for 10 years, sharing an apartment, right? Like sometimes one of the partners would be at home, like, a homemaker. The other one was the breadwinner. And then sometimes the breadwinner would die. And then this other person, they wouldn't have any rights wasn't for the União Estável, but that's a completely different scenario from what we see nowadays, right? Like nowadays, someone living together for less than 2 years, right? Less than 2 years without living in the same place. Like, how can you found this relationship to be meaningful enough to go and get something out of one of the partners to give it to the other one? I think it doesn't make sense, right? But again, originally the União Estável, I think it made a lot of sense, right? But those are things very typical of Brazil as a whole. I sometimes I think like it is almost like we bring this side of the carnival, right? The carnival from our culture into the legal system. Like a lot of I think it looks like we are always trying to outdo someone else, bringing the new novelty into the legal system, right? It looks like people are not happy with things to be the way they were before, so they're always trying to come up with something new, and sometimes they overdo it, right? The União Estável, for me, it's clearly a sign of overdoing and exaggerating in terms of legislation and legal rules, if you will. All right, Pedro, can you briefly talk about car insurance in Brazil? Yes, Pedro. So, car insurance, first thing, if you are a foreign citizen, yes, you can have car insurance if you're renting a car. If you have a good credit card from the United States, typically it's gonna cover the insurance for your car. Traditionally, American Express does that, right? Like if you have any type of American Express card, there are some limitations, so you need to check on the limitations, but typically they're going to cover any damages to the car itself. You also have some level of coverage for you as a person. And typically, American Express and other cards from the US, they are not going to cover liability to third parties, right? They're not going to cover liability to third parties, right? There are also American Express cards in Brazil for Brazilians, and I do have American Express. And whenever I'm renting a car, whenever I am, traveling throughout Brazil, I know that American Express is going to cover the insurance for my car, but they're not going to cover anything that happens to a third party. So I typically say, listen, I don't want any type of insurance for my rental other than liability to third parties. And then I buy liability to third parties, which of course it's cheaper than buying the full package of insurance protection for your car. All right, so that's the first tip. The second tip, if you're buying a car in Brazil, then yes, you absolutely must have insurance, not only because Brazilians drive very aggressively, so sometimes it's not even your fault, and you're gonna be involved, unfortunately, in a car crash. And if the other person doesn't have an insurance, guess what? Even if you are the one in the right, nobody is gonna take the tab, right? So if you have insurance, that's the first upside, to be protected against financial losses. The other side, unfortunately, very common or very often, there is a lot of car theft in Brazil. So if you have insurance and if someone steals your car, I don't know, you are in Fortaleza, maybe you're gonna park by Meireles, by the coast, and next morning you go out there, your car is not there. Nobody's gonna do a thing, right? Like, trust me, chances of recovering a stolen car, they are very tiny, right? Now, if you have insurance, guess what? Then you can have, at least most of the value for the car recovered. In terms of cost, it is somewhat costly to have a car insurance in Brazil, but typically, if you're coming from the US, those costs, they are not going to be that meaningful, right? They are going to be potentially similar to what you pay in the United States for car insurance. All right. Let me know if you have any question in particular, Pedro, about that, because there are so many aspects to car insurance. But a good thing is, listen, you are entitled to it. Typically, even if you are not a resident, okay, you are entitled to car insurance. And I strongly advise you to have car insurance, okay? It does not matter if you are owning or if you are renting a car in Brazil. Simone, what happens after 1 year? My digital nomad visa expires. I can enter as tourist. Yes, Simone. So you could either renew, right? Like, I mean, sometimes, people are going to renew. We have clients who have renewed for twice, even though we can never tell you if this is going to be available like in the future, because originally the digital nomad was supposed to be renewable for just one term. But now we have people renewing for a second time, right? So maybe that's going to be an ongoing opportunity for people to keep renewing. The major downside, I would say, for the digital nomad is that it does not lead you to anything, right? So if you enter Brazil under the digital nomad, yes, you have the first year, you renew once, you renew twice. I don't know, in theory, if you would renew for 10 times, like you've been living in Brazil for 10 years, once you stop renewing, you don't have anything, right? And in other countries, such as Portugal, if you enter under the digital nomad and you stay, at least as of today, right? It's changing. The rules is changing as we speak. We believe it's going to become 7 years, but as of today, let's say if you stayed in Portugal for 5 years under the digital nomad, guess what? You could even apply for citizenship, which is a pretty big deal, right? But not in Brazil. In Brazil, if you stayed in Brazil for 10 years, right, in theory, right, because the digital nomad started in 2022, right? So naturally, you cannot have like a 10-year digital nomad. But in theory, like even if you had a 10-year digital nomad, you could not apply, for permanent residency. You could not apply for citizenship. You could not apply for pretty much anything. Now, the upside, something that we see happening very often, right? So I think that's a pretty good thing about the digital nomad is that this works more like a type of a bridge visa, right? So you want to come to Brazil real quick. Digital nomad is typically the way to go. And once you are in Brazil, you can, find a more longer-term approach for your journey, right? But then you don't need to, spend a lot of time thinking and articulating. You just come to Brazil, get a digital nomad, and figure things out during your stay as a digital nomad, if you will, right? So we see that happening all the time. Some people, they're going to find love in Brazil. Other people, they are going to be in the process of achieving retirement. Very often, the person is going to contact us. They say, well, I'm going to, get retired. I'm going to start to get my retirement, I don't know, in February of 2026. Can I start the process now? And no, you cannot, right? Like you need to be drawing. You need to be drawing your retirement funds to be able to apply for the Brazil retirement visa. So if you come over as a digital nomad, and there are strategies, even if you're not working for a company, right? There are strategies for you to qualify for the digital nomad. You could, in theory, come immediately to Brazil and, renew the digital nomad until you have the right circumstances to secure either a retirement visa or real estate investor visa, or maybe you find love, and then you're going to have access to permanent residency through marriage. All right? All right, last participation is going to be from Pedro. I travel to Brazil twice a year. I've been told that most people in Brazil don't have any car insurance other than the annual tax they pay to the government, mainly due to high costs. Pedro, I don't think this information is correct, right? I don't think it is. The experience I have is something different. Most people will have insurance. It is expensive by Brazilian standards, right? Not by U.S. standards. By Brazilian standards, it is because, people are going to be trying to make the most out of whatever money they have. And sometimes, they are going to skip on car insurance, and they are going to have some type of device installed in the car so they can try to locate the car in the event their cars get stolen. I don't think it's a good idea, because believe me, car thieves in Brazil, unfortunately, they are extremely smart and experienced, and sometimes they have tools to detect whatever you installed in the car. So it sounds to me like a horrible idea to be in Brazil without car insurance. Now, granted, I do know people who don't have car insurance, right? But I don't think they are the majority. If I had to wind guess, and I may be wrong, and all you need to do is to ask ChatGPT probably after our live stream, if you have the pro version, right? Like the pro version, I think it's more reliable than the other versions. But if you do ask, you probably get a better sense of the percentage. If I had to guess, I would guess something like 65% of Brazilian car owners with car insurance and 35% without, right? That's my wild guess without ever researching about the topic. You're pretty welcome, Pedro. Thank you so much, everyone who participated in today's live stream. Letting you know that our next one is going to be on Wednesday, right? And on Wednesdays, we meet at 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. On Sundays, we meet on 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time. Thank you again for your participation, and wishing you guys a blessed rest of your Sunday.